Washington's making some big moves in the transfer portal.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's site editor with Athlon Sports Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the days. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by the College Football Playoff. The College Football Playoff is here, and you don't want to miss a moment of the action. The College Football Playoff presented by Allstate begins with 4 first-round games on December 20th and 21st on ESPN, ABC, TNT, and Max. Lars, we got a really fun show coming out at all the Everydayers today. Before we get there, just a quick reminder, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, click the like on the video if you're audio only. Please leave us a 5-star review. All those things really do help us out a lot. We really appreciate it because we got so much fun stuff coming at you today, throughout the rest of the week, throughout the whole transfer portal cycle, really. Michael Penix, Lars, finally named the Atlanta Falcons starter. We're going to get there in a little bit. Took long enough. Yes, sir. Bow and arrow. We love to see it. Elijah Jackson's in the transfer portal. That's a really interesting development on several fronts. We're going to get there. But Lars, one thing we want to do today, we want to have a little fun. We want to talk about who Washington's next commit might be. Putting you on the spot right now. Who do you got?
You know, I think as I was writing that, story about what we'll talk about next segment, I think it's going to be a defensive guy. Let's probably just say spin on the roulette wheel there because, 5 out of the 6 options with defensive guys, like you're breaking wood on here if it's Jonte Cook. But I think if I had to pick one of them, I'd probably go Uiagaleilei and then Tacario Davis. If kind of, and that's not, and I say that knowing which one you're probably going to take, given the one that I left out in that trio there.
Yeah, I like where you're going with that because mine would be Jacob Manu. And there are plenty of reasons behind that where, obviously with the knee injury, his status for the start of the 2025 season is still a bit of a question mark. That's a situation we'll monitor moving forward, obviously. But he's somebody who's on his official visit to Washington right now as we record this on Wednesday. I believe it should be wrapping up tonight. So that's something to keep an eye on there. But that seems like just a guy who, when we look at what Washington is trying to build, especially now with Kamori House in the transfer portal, taking a visit to North Carolina this weekend, it's something where you need one of those senior leaders in the building. Jacob Manu, somebody who, with the rest of that 22 class at Arizona, just to name a couple of guys that are here now, Jonah Coleman, Ephesians Prysock being, prime examples of that. You need a couple of those players in your room to help establish the culture that Jedd Fisch is looking to build. And he'd be a perfect example of that at what is really now turned into a major position of need.
Yeah, well, and I think it's a 2-in-1 combo, right? It's not just a, nice senior kind of like a Chris Moll type where you're taking, kind of just want a veteran presence in the room, help the young guys kind of, for every Kamori House, you have so many, Hayden Moores. And that's no shot at Hayden Moore. That's just, you can bring a guy in, know what he's going to bring, but also still not see a ton of him on the field in year one. That doesn't mean 2, 3, and 4 can't be fantastic. So just want to make that clear. It's not a shot at the individual player, just using him as an example. But with that being said, yeah, we saw what happened, in kind of your defensive pass where you're basically playing 2 or 3 freshmen next to each other. And it works time to time. But I think especially in, what it seems to be that Jedd is building with this defensive crop, and you look at the 2 interior linemen they added, and just Alex McLaughlin the other day as well at safety, you can kind of see, okay, we're okay adding some senior pieces in the front 7 because the back 4 we kind of got, locked down, especially if Tacario ends up choosing UW as well.
So let's move on. We want to leave Tacario out of this one for the time being, where we've talked a lot about him. We need to talk about Ta'ita'i Uiagaleilei, where this is a guy who has some production at Arizona. Again, is somebody who knows what Jedd Fisch wants to do and is just a guy who really, when you look at it, is somebody who's played at the power 4 level. You need some more of those guys in the room to just eat up some snaps at a certain point. And he's somebody who's versatile, can do that from a whole bunch of different spots along the defensive line. And I think about the loss of Voy Tanufi, and I don't think he's the same level of pass rusher that Voy is, where Voy was just a disruptor anywhere you lined him up on the field. But the more I watch him, the more I say, yeah, this is a guy who would really work for what Washington needs right now.
Yeah, I think if Voy could be 6'4", that would be awesome. But you look at exactly what you said. You're talking about 200, almost 300 plus snaps each of the last 3 seasons at Arizona. So the production. It's almost like pairing him with Russell Davis. Russell Davis was going to be coming off an injury, things like that. But you can, again, similar to what we were talking about other positions, you can see where Jedd Fisch is going, and it's not a matter of that because I don't think it's that he doesn't have his culture in place. I think he knows, like, it's kind of working through the process. The culture is there. It's just got to get the right pieces to kind of add to the culture. I think that's why it really seems like the defensive line is clearly an area where Jedd said as much throughout the month of November against Penn State, Oregon, things like that. So yeah, we gotta figure out the trenches. And 6'4", 280 might not, you might want to see 20 more pounds on that, but it's like, hey, look, if you can get home with 6'4", 280, I don't care. And you finish second for Arizona with 25 pressures, excuse me. And so you can clearly see the production is there, and just imagine if let's say he gets 500 snaps as opposed to just 250 or 300.
Sure, where that's I want to push back a little bit there because it's not. I think the whole thing is you don't want him taking 500 snaps. You don't want any of these guys taking 500 snaps, which I think you make a good point in bringing that up, where it's you want to bring a guy like that in. So Ontario Thompson, so Simone Peppa, Elinius Davis, Bryce Butler, all these guys, Omar Khan, all these guys don't have to take that number, and you can have that rotation and be fresh, and you're a little more physical, and just different things like that are really, really important to where this defensive line needs to be moving forward. But Lars, I want to throw a little bit of a sleeper at you here. We got to move away from Arizona for a minute because there seems to be something brewing with Idaho wide receiver Jordan Dwyer. This is a guy I'm very, very interested in. He enters the transfer portal, and 247 Sports loves him in the rankings. Top 20 overall. He's coming on a visit starting on Thursday as the Everdares are listening to this. Keep in mind, he's a Puyallup native. This is a guy from the area, and it seems like he probably is very interested in a, reunion and coming home and looking for a wide receiver. I think of all the guys that have come in at wide receiver, he'd be the best fit.
Yeah, well, ironically, as we're recording this on Wednesday, another portal soon-to-be visitor, no longer visiting, Justice Williams, committed to Utah. So one of those situations where you look at it and say, okay, the guys that are coming off the board, it's like, you see UW is kind of zeroing in on, you're taking the shot with John Cook. Kind of see what happens there. You'd be negligent not to go bring him in for a visit. But I think if they just come away with the Idaho receiver, that to me, like, you know what? You only need one. Remember, you only need one. So you're talking about which one do you want to take. I would certainly bet my bet on the latter because, again, like you said, it's closer to home. There's been some other big schools that have come after him. But if you think about looking at what Jedd's offense needs next year with Jamon, it's a perfect fit. And it still doesn't hamper Audric Harris, Keith Reynolds. You can go down the list, Rasheed Williams, and the young guys that are coming back at receiver next season. It just kind of adds to it.
I absolutely agree. And that's one of the most interesting parts about it, where, you might feel a certain way about Washington trying to take a receiver. I'm still interested in where they might go at tight end. After Cade Eldridge visited, we haven't seen any, major movement on that front since then. But another reason I wanted to bring up Dwyer is you just look at the other body types of the room. He's exactly what you want in terms of just a perfect complement to what everybody else brings to the table. And on top of that, almost 1,200 yards this past season. This is a guy who has produced, again, yes, it's at a lower level, but we got to remember this Idaho team gave Oregon a run for its money early in the season. This is a really, really strong team. Obviously, Jason Eck goes to New Mexico now, so a lot of these guys are looking for new homes, but this is the perfect addition that you're looking for that you want to bring in.
Yeah, and by the way, speaking of Idaho, shout out to what's his name?
Thomas Ford, yeah.
Thomas Ford, yeah. I was gonna say, I was like, I knew the Ford part. I was like, which one? There's a couple of teams in that family, but no, I'm sure as much as you want to keep him, odds on bet it's gonna be hard to come back and make that selling point. And I think it's a perfect, almost what college football should be, right? Where you see Clemson finally took a transfer receiver, and it's like, hey, look, you could take a smaller school receiver because again, you're just supplementing what you have on the roster. You're not trying to go out and buy a 1 and a 2 and a 5.
Sure.
To supplement your 3 and 4 receiver that you have on the roster. It's like, coach up the other guys you already have, because clearly the usage those two guys got, Audric and Rasheed in particular this season, they're going to be counted on next year. But Dwyer, it would be the perfect complement for what they're looking for.
He's a next level playmaker in terms of what he brings to the table. And the fact that he's proven is just, I don't want to say it's a step up from all the other guys in the room, but it's a nice insurance policy to have, basically, when you think of the only other guy with proven reps, just an extended amount of proven reps coming back, is Denzel Boston. But Lars, we got to talk about Elijah Jackson because he entered the transfer portal on Wednesday. which we'll get to right after a message from the College Football Playoff. It's that time of the year. The College Football Playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports' coverage of the College Football Playoff begins on December 21st, starting with the College Football Playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. East, leading into our first match of the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the College Football Playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. So Lars, Elijah Jackson announces his decision to enter the transfer portal. This is interesting on a couple of fronts. First off, Elijah Jackson, no matter what, he went through some ups and downs over the course of his career. He is and always will be a piece of Washington history. I just remember being down there. I wanted to make sure I got this in there right off the top. Being down there on the sideline of the Sugar Bowl and just watching that moment happen is something I will never forget for as long as I live. That's just the kind of moment that he was involved in. It's truly spectacular. And despite wanting to go play his final year elsewhere, this is somebody who Husky fans should, and rightfully so, I've seen it all over social media after his announcement, should always embrace and thank for that moment. Where it's cool to see he stuck it out through a couple of head coaches. One of the guys who was here through COVID as part of that 2020 class and everything, wants to try to make a go of it for his senior season. And the main thing we want to get into here is something that Jedd Fisch told members of the media on Tuesday was that 10-12 number that he was looking for in the transfer portal. That's not the case anymore. That number looks like it's going to be a little bit higher. And part of it is, guys like Elijah, if you mentioned Tacario Davis in the first segment, if Washington is interested in making a serious run at a guy like that, and maybe at somebody else in the transfer portal, Elijah is somebody who deserves to play his final season. He deserves that. And if, unfortunately, that has to be somewhere else, so be it. But I think in the same vein as, Jedd talks about a guy like Will Rogers, where it's, hey, that's a guy who wants to come back and be a GA, be a coach one day. There will always be a position open at Washington for him. I think that's the case with a lot of these guys, no matter the head coach. And I put Elijah right there at the top of that list.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about, I remember because it was like the first/last Jimmy Lake class, if you will. I mean, I know 21, yeah. And then you say what you feel about 21.
Yeah.
But my point, the reason why I bring that up is it was like, I remember Elijah working out in the front yard. So it's always been a guy that was fully committed to Washington. Like, and I think it was like a 43-inch vertical that he had, like his redshirt freshman season. Like he was always kind of just like right there. And this season I think he got 150, 200 snaps, a little under 200 snaps according to PFF behind Thaddeus Dixon. And like at times, it was kind of like you just can never. Like it was almost like nothing would top that moment in the Sugar Bowl. Like even if Utah won the national championship, I think it would still stand alone, no matter how that national championship ended, with that singular moment, because it kind of just epitomized everything coming to fruition. Where the leap, no penalty, where everything came into fruition as it should. And then he decided to stick around for Jedd, and was, like I said on yesterday's show, was one of the first people to show up in Jedd's office and say, "Hey, like I want to stay, I want to compete." When he came in January. Did his best. I think was banged up a little bit at times throughout the season. And, it's one of those cases where similar to certain guys last year, where it's like, look, you know what? You took the program to a national championship. Obviously, we'd love to have you back and things like that, but can't blame you if you want to go 1 year, go pop off somewhere, at Miami, like Calepo and Buelo at Ole Miss, where it's like nobody would fault you with this. It's a little different in this case, because I think, probably at his heart of heart, he would want to come back and just, finish things where he started. But when you look at how many snaps he was getting this season, if he can go like Devon Banks, the DB there, double DB actually. Look at that. Where he goes to Boise State and does well this past season, and competing for the playoffs and things like that. So there are tangible benefits to saying, I graduated from Washington, I put 34 games in. 80 plus tackles, all those sorts of things. So it's part of a special moment that'll probably rarely, if ever, be topped in UW history. Like you can just say like that's probably a top 3 moment in program history right there. Like I don't, off the top of your head, you got number 1 and 2, if it's not 1. Like at least for older people, I can understand the national championship year in '91 and all those sorts of things. But it's almost like he deserves the respect, as you said, of like what, like. And so this was an interesting stat. It kind of blew my mind, especially given his leaping ability. And the ironic part about the leap, it was a PBU, not an INT.
Right.
Remember the Keith Taylor thing that I used to tell you? It was 43 games, 0 career.
Never recorded a pick.
Exactly. And again, got drafted in the NFL. So it's not like I'm not trying to dog the player by saying this, but it's just almost crazy. I looked, Elijah had 34 games and no pick.
Right.
And I was just like, wow, crazy.
Yeah, that's a really interesting stat. But we got to get into the broader implications of what this means as well. Where it's not clearing space. Let's be real about that. Where this is from what we've heard, what we've been told, that this is a situation where he deserves to go play his final season to the fullest. That might not be the case here. And that could be a really good sign for Tacario Davis. That could be a really good sign that Washington might be in on some other top cornerbacks. Jedd Fisch referenced visitors that are going to be arriving throughout the week, over the weekend. So that could be a really nice sign that Washington is interested in landing a couple of the other guys. Maybe they feel really good about their talent evaluation of Dylan Robinson or Darian Clemens, Ramon Adams, whatever it might be. There are a lot of different, situations at play here is the best way to put it. There are a lot of different scenarios that could play out. I think Tacario Davis is the one that Washington and John Richardson, Jedd Fisch are all really banking on happening. But I think it's really curious to think about now. I believe we're up to 12 off the top of my head. I have a little scholarship player tracker going over on Huskies Wire. I'm pretty sure it's 12 scholarship players right now that are in the portal. There's 28, 29 coming in on from the high school class. There are a few scholarships that are outstanding right now.
Yeah, I think I was 11 to 11 or 12, but somewhere in that ballpark. I don't know. Maybe there's one off because again, McAllister wasn't, and certain guys aren't. But I think it also kind of speaks to this is a good sign maybe for Caleb Presley, another young guy who didn't get a ton of maybe as much run as we thought this past season. And hey, okay, the only way those guys can get snaps is somebody's gotta. You can stay and compete for spring ball. And then try in the portal, in that period and basically in the middle of spring ball, like if you realize like on day 5 or 6, that's basically what these players are being forced to do. Would you rather go in now when everybody else and their mother's going in or wait, try and, fight it out through? Because again, most schools are on semester, UW is on quarters, which makes things a little interesting. That I think is honestly the biggest hurdle in this whole figure out the transfer portal schedule thing, because it's like Washington is like one of the few schools on quarter systems. I swear most schools are on semesters.
Yeah,
at least that's what it seems like. And so it's like that's an additional wrinkle. But again, if you could get, why would you wait till spring ball? You might as well go do it now. And it's again that benefits the young guys behind him. Rashawn Clark, another guy, freshman, whether he plays at safety or goes out to corner or whatever. These are all spots that at some point in spring ball, they're going to have to be competed for. And, it's like, I'm not saying one of those guys is going to transfer, but, at some point, it's the natural attrition of college football. And I know people don't want to hear that, but it's just like, in order for the young guys to play, where are those snaps going to come from?
I agree with you where it's something where, you look at Thaddeus Dixon, that's somebody off to the NFL at this point. The JUCO ruling on that is really interesting where, we see Ontario Thompson looking to get a year of eligibility back. Thaddeus Dixon would have one if, it applies to him, but that's a bridge we're going to cross when we get there, where if Thaddeus Dixon does have a year of eligibility back, he wants to come back for that. Hey, I think this coaching staff would say, sign us up. We certainly need that after the way he played in 2024. So that could be an additional wrinkle in all this. At the same point where you have to think about that and say, yeah, maybe if they do want Thaddeus Dixon back and you're still interested in bringing in somebody else. Lars, there's one name you left out of that the group of younger guys. I know you didn't do it on purpose, but it's Leroy Bryant, where we've seen him play a little bit. We saw him at Penn State. He had the one missed tackle there, but he was somebody who over the course of fall camp was getting reps with some of the more experienced guys. He was running with the twos and he got hurt. He missed a little bit of time there at the beginning of the season. Didn't necessarily come back the way the coaching staff might have hoped. But this is one of those things where we saw him play really well in the spring. And if we can see him have another strong spring practice, maybe we see him get a little bit more run in the bowl game with Elijah going elsewhere. We know that Jedd said that guys are welcome to stay through the bowl game if they so choose. Once they start taking visits, different story, where that's, a different conversation there. But if Elijah wants to play, that's one thing. But if they say, hey, we're comfortable with you taking your visits, we want to see what we have in X, Y, and Z, it's a conversation worth having for the coaching staff. But I'm just curious to see how this is going to play out, because I think that you have the ability now, if you're John Richardson, to take 2 cornerbacks. You can do that if you want. but you don't need to, depending on how you might feel about Leroy or Dylan Robinson or Caleb Presley. Or maybe you say, hey, yeah, we're really hoping this is going to impact Thaddeus Dixon. So just a situation to keep an eye on. But Lars, we got to move on here because we're so excited about Michael Penix finally getting that starting job. We'll get there right after a message from our good friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch to make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Quick shout out to Cortland Sutton on Thursday Night Football. Love some of his odds this week. Go check out. I would certainly recommend his over in catches, over in yards, and an anytime touchdown after Mike Evans and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers put up 40 on this Chargers defense last week on Thursday Night Football. Really curious to see how that's going to play out. We've also got a message from our friends over at Prize Picks, because you can make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks, because Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. You can join now because this holiday season, Prize Picks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. Do you think James Cook will get more than 60 yards next week? Will Joe Burrow pass for more than 1.5 touchdowns? Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. During my little trip to California, as all they ever dare saw with my different background, I had a lot of fun on Prize Picks. Shout out to Patrick Mahomes. He did some great things for me. CeeDee Lamb, he was real clutch on Prize Picks. Love seeing those guys do what they do. They're so much fun to watch. You should download the app today and use code LOCKDOWNCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use code LOCKDOWNCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Lars, we can say something that very few people can say. We were some of the first to talk about Michael Penix going to the Atlanta Falcons. We had that back in February. We've got it dated. We got it timestamped. You can go back and check it out. So we are overjoyed by this news. Quick personal note. Shout out to Mike. Last time we ran into him, it was March. Took just a moment to say hi to us, catch up. So It's always wonderful to see him. We got to make sure we get that in there, right? But this is awesome. Where I have a lot of thoughts about what the Falcons can do under Mike for the rest of the regular season. But after this pick was so maligned and just so criticized for, obvious reasons with the Kirk Cousins contract, everything like that, we get why the criticism was where it was, but this should have happened like a month ago, right? 1 touchdown, 9 picks for Cousins. It's been abysmal.
You know what's ironic?
What?
The dual UW quarterback situation with Will and Damon and Penix and Kirk Cousins. Like, hey, like in mid-October, like, hey, what kill us to just try him out, just see what happens.
Yeah,
give him a start at Indiana, give him a start at Iowa, just see what happens. If you lose, you lose. So be it. Will's a great kid, And again, Kirk Cousins, like Will Rogers, both great teammates. Both kind of came in with a deal already in hand, and you kind of got to, on some level, honor the commitment and respect the wishes. But at some point, when you're 6-6, or in Atlanta's case 7-7, it's like, I think now is the time. Probably again, like you said, maybe 3 or 4 games ago. But at some point, it's almost like, what? First game rattled confidence. Second game, maybe it's just the defense. And I think now it's kind of been a product of multiple games for Raheem Morris to say, what? We're 7-7. If we lose the next 2, we're out. If Mike happens to win, it's great. And by the way, this actually kind of works out for Mike, where it's like, what? He doesn't have to, come in as the guy pressuring Kirk Cousins. If anything, everybody was lambasting it. And I do want to say, not on top of your point of when you said it, because I think you said it, and then I said it after they had signed Kirk Cousins. And I was like, hey, you know what? Still wouldn't be a bad idea.
Still works.
Still, the Patrick Mahomes route does pay off, people. And again, I know it's a rare kind of comp to make, and I'm not saying Mahomes or Penix is the next Mahomes, but again, I wouldn't also count it out just in terms of, again, when he gets in, there's enough pieces in Atlanta to make it work. The question is the coaching there? Is the scheme right? Can can they get these next couple of wins and, potentially, secure that playoff spot? And if that's the case, that's a perfect running start for Mike, and no sweat off his bones, because next year they'll probably bring back Kirk Cousins and just be, in case Mike gets hurt or, we have a sophomore slump or whatever the case may be. And otherwise, then you cut him after next season and say, you know what? Great. We already have our franchise quarterback. We don't need an overpriced one.
So this is the interesting part of that debate, where he's still owed $50 million next year, guaranteed. Unless you can find a way to trade him, then you can maybe find a way to get out of the money. But this is why I think it's really interesting. So shout out to, it's blanking on me who had the stats, somebody over at CBS. There hasn't been a first-round quarterback since 1970 to make his first career start in week 16 or later and go on to lead that team to the playoffs. That hasn't happened. That could change with Michael Penix, where, Lars, this is the Falcons' schedule for the rest of the season. This is why they made the move, to make the playoffs, because they play the Giants this weekend. And then in week 18, they play the Carolina Panthers. I almost said New Orleans Saints. That's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I already have it mapped out for how they win the division as well. But the reason I skipped over week 17 is because they play the Washington Commanders on Sunday Night Football. This might be just the most fun. I'm so glad they made this move when they did, where if Mike lights it up this weekend against the Giants, which, as you and I are, and all our everydayers, any Husky fan out there knows, is very well within the realm of possibilities for Mike. We could call it, the real battle for the Heisman Trophy, where, yeah, I'm still salty about that because Mike absolutely deserved the Heisman Trophy last year. And if, I've mapped out all these playoff scenarios. The Commanders play the Eagles this weekend. The Commanders are in the 7th seed right now. They'll drop to 9-6 if they lose to the Eagles. Then, all of a sudden, if they lose to the Falcons as well, that could flip-flop with the head-to-head right there. And not only could Mike potentially just say, hey, yeah, that should be my Heisman Trophy, he could beat Jaden Daniels to get the Falcons into a playoff position, which would just be so cool to just say, all right, I've watched this Falcons offense just painfully all season long. It's just made my eyes bleed at times, mainly for fantasy football reasons. That's beside the point. Nobody cares about that. But the more I watch this offense, the more I was like, why can't we see Mike? Why can't we see this? And this isn't even, from you and I being the Locked On Huskies guys. This is just for me as somebody who likes football. That offense was slow. It was boring. It was stagnant. Kirk couldn't move. He has a solid offensive line in front of him. Shout out to Caleb McGarry. He's a really solid offensive line in front of him. He's got 3 top 10 picks around him. He's got Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts. That's its own scenario there. And he's got Drake London. And that's, without mentioning Ray McLeod, who's a lot of fun to watch, without mentioning Darnell Mooney, without mentioning Tyler Algier, who's a really good second running back. This is an awesome supporting cast. And because of Kirk Cousins, they've done nothing with it. And since that 500-yard, 5-touchdown game, whatever it was on Thursday Night Football, he's been terrible. And I understand this move wasn't made because of optics, because you gave him so much money. But at the same point, that, you could have sped up the move with that same reasoning with, hey, we paid this guy $180 million and he's been terrible. We need to, do something to just give him a kick or whatever it is. And we're starting Michael Penix next week. And maybe, we'll consider a quarterback competition after that. That could have been a move. It wasn't, whatever reason, doesn't matter. Don't care. But this is so cool because we saw Mike thrive for 2 years. And watching him have a chance to go do that at the NFL level now is just so exciting.
It reminds me of when I asked Kalen DeBoer, shout out for the trigger warning there, about the 3 quarterback competition going into the season. When it's like, hey, how's Sam, Dylan, and Mike looking? And he got to Mike last, and it was kind of like, you could just, Sam's got a great deep arm. Like, I know, I saw him in 2020 and 2021 when I was up at the top end of the stadium just watching Sam drop, great dimes, for like 30, 40 yards, but then, couldn't read over the middle. And so, it's like, you can kind of just see the answer building, and then got to Demo, gunslinger and all those sorts of things. And Mike's just been solid. It's like, exactly. Mike is literally in no rush. And it was kind of the beautiful part about his UW career that was really symbolic. He was never in any rush. Like, how many times in 22, I think it was like 6 or 7 games where he wasn't even sacked once. And, you look and fast forward in 23 and you get I think it was the Joe Moore word in 23, yep. Right? Yeah. And so, you build up on top of it. I remember his parents being like, he has never had an offensive line this good in his entire football life. And I was like, I mean, to be fair, it's kind of hard to top this one. Bar was kind of set high, but the story with Mike was just put a couple pieces around him and give him 2.5, 3 seconds, and he'll figure it out. He'll sit in the pocket and stare down the barrel. Like, Mike, how many times you stare down the barrel and just let it rip for 50 down to Jalen Polk or McMillan?
So I think about one particular throw. We've seen Mike in 2 games this season, both of them at the end of blowouts. The first one was really cool to see it against Ryan Grubb and the Seattle Seahawks. And then the second one was against the Denver Broncos. And they put him in at the end of a blowout, and he made a throw down the left side to Casey Washington. Made a perfect throw. Washington wasn't able to hang on to it. Unfortunately, got injured on the play. But that was just a drop in the bucket. It was such a perfect throw. And it was just in that moment that I was like, yeah, like you and I already knew. You and I already knew, hey, we truly believe that this guy is going to succeed at the NFL level. That throw was that moment for me where it just snapped. And I said, yes, it's time. You need to make this move now, because you know who can't make that throw right now? Kirk Cousins. He's 36 years old, coming off an Achilles tear. It's time. And if somebody else wants to take on that contract, they really should, because I truly believe we're going to see Mike succeed over the next couple of weeks, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And Lars, just as somebody, I put this out on Twitter after the announcement. I took a couple of fun pictures of him staying after on senior day in 2022, where I remember watching him high five every single fan that was draped all the way around the Husky tunnel, because we all thought, wow, what a season for Michael Penix. This guy is going to go down as one of the greatest one-year wonders in college football history, because we thought with that injury history, with what that NFL draft class was, there was no reason for him to stay in school and he should go to the NFL. Then everything happened the way it did. I'm not going to get into that because we're almost out of time here, but I just remember in that moment just thinking, this is going to be a really special story no matter what happens to Michael Penix. And I know I've said it many times already in whatever we've been talking for 10 minutes. I couldn't be more excited for him. And with that being said, Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all everydayers tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. And one thing we want to make sure you go check out is our Locked On Huskies Insider Program. The link to that is down in the description below. If you want to check it out, we're dropping our rumors in there, breaking news, recruiting stuff that we're hearing, anything, because it all goes right to your text message inbox. And if you have any questions on it, you can just text us. You have any questions that you want to ask us, just text us. It's that easy. You text us. We'll get back to you. We're going to be doing a Locked On Huskies Insider exclusive Q&A at some point next week as a little Christmas gift to all our insiders, because we really do appreciate everything that you guys bring to the table. Again, free 2-week trial, and then after that is $4.99 a month. But with that being said, please make sure you subscribe to make sure you're up to date on all the latest breaking news wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating the channel through content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you never miss when we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review, as it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Friday.